Hey, District 2 sports fans, it's Gregory here, and I want to tell you about our new sponsorship here. If you're looking to make your business stand out, you've got to check out Chaos Cartel Company. They specialize in custom shirts, hats, tumblers, banners, and so much more. And the best part, there's no minimum order, and their pricing is amazing. I should know because we have a few shirts from them. Whether you're a small business or just looking to get some cool merch, Chaos Cartel Company is here to help. They love working with other businesses to bring your brand to life. If you want to get started, give them a call at 434 489 6123 or shoot them an email at chaoscartel1, and that's the number one, at gmail.com. Chaos Cartel Company, making your business look good, one custom piece at a time.
You are now listening to the District 2 Sports Podcast, available on all your favorite music apps. Like and subscribe.
All right, it's the District 2 Sports Podcast. We're back with another exciting episode here. We're back in Southwest Virginia with the first-year head coach of the Emory and Henry Wasps is Coach Jimmy Allen. Coach, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you guys for having me.
Well, Coach, no, we do appreciate it. I know you have a lot of stuff probably going on for the offseason, getting started after you just finished the season. But kind of like I was talking before, I like to start off, kind of get to know you, let our fans kind of know what your background is. So I know you grew up or were born in El Paso, Texas, but kind of grew up in West Point. But the one thing I saw that really interests me there was that you moved to Roanoke in your 11th grade year and played for the legendary Bill Pope. So I wanted to kind of talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, absolutely. I was really fortunate. My dad was in the military, which was how I was born in El Paso. We moved around a lot. He finished up his military service at West Point, and he retired going into my junior year of high school. And so he was from Roanoke. He had interviewed at a few different places, college wise. He was a professor, and ended up one of the options was going back to the Roanoke area, and so for me that meant I got a chance to go play at Northside, and coach was he was in maybe his third season, I think, at Northside, and so it was cool to be able to kind of be a part of the first teams that he was able to coach at Northside, and at that time, the year I moved there. Northside was still in the Roanoke Valley District, and that was the year that Patrick Henry won the state tournament. They had George Lynch and Curtis Blair and all those guys. So that was my first year of basketball in the Roanoke area. Was playing against those guys, and William Fleming was the only team that beat them that year. And we played Patrick Henry 3 times, played Fleming twice. I mean, it was a cool basketball experience.
Just kind of go back on
Hey,
that.
Gregory,
Okay.
I was just going to speak on that. I'm sorry, Coach. I just got to throw my GW High School in there as well. That was a year that GW had Herman Moore,
Yeah.
Mike Williamson, a couple others, and we got destroyed by that group up there.
They were really,
lynching
really
them.
good. Yeah.
They
I
were.
mean, they had four, well, they had five guys that played Division One, and then Russell Turner, who was, maybe the best player in Division Three at the time too.
We interviewed Coach Pope maybe a couple months ago, and these two have seen him this year coaching as GW as well. But was he the same kind of fiery type of head coach just this third season when you were there playing?
Yeah, maybe even more so, I think. He hadn't won quite as many games at that point. So I went and actually I got to watch him in their quarterfinal state tournament game, and it's just amazing to see. We were playing in this little gym at Northside. Now there's this massive, building, the Coach Pope building, and just real, when you can sit back, and I told him, you got to sit back and really appreciate the fact that what you've accomplished over that amount of time is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I told them they don't name buildings after bad coaches. That's for sure.
They don't name buildings after coaches very often. You're lucky if you get a court named after you. He got a building named after him. So
Well, Coach, yeah, I guess you have a pretty good career there at Northside because you get to go play some D3 basketball. Can you talk about your recruitment process, kind of like what schools you were looking at and what led you to Emory and Henry?
Yeah, I mean, the ODAC is such a great league, and when I was in high school, myself, Derek Elmore, who played with us, we had a really good team. Both he and I ended up here at Emory and Henry, but we had another kid on our team, Neil Burke, who played at Bridgewater. And I mean, there was a lot of guys that ended up, from that either the Roanoke Valley District or the Blue Ridge District at the time, that were good enough to play college basketball. And so a lot of guys ended up in the ODAC playing in that league. And Emory recruited me, Roanoke College, Bridgewater, those kinds of schools. Emory and Henry, Coach Johnson was just kind of getting things rolling here. They'd been to one NCAA tournament. They were winning 20 games a year. So I was excited to join a program that was challenging on a national level. So that was a kind of a big part of my decision.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you guys made it to four straight NCAA tournaments and even made it to the Sweet 16 your senior year. So can you talk about that experience as well, getting that experience in the tournament?
We did, yeah. I got here at a really good time. There was good players here, and I had a good high school career, and I was a decent player, but I was very fortunate to get to play on some really good teams with very very good players, and certainly my experience in playing for somebody like Coach Pope, and then coming here and playing for somebody like Bob Johnson, that those guys impacted me in a huge way to decide ultimately that I thought I could coach and maybe wanted to coach.
Coach, are you selling yourself short a little bit on your playing career? Because I think you were second, or I don't know if it still is, but you were second all time in assists and top five in steals. Is that correct?
Yeah, but you have to play with good players. So like I was passing the ball to guys that were making shots, and um, so I was lucky as far as again playing with really good people.
And so after your Sweet 16, I guess your senior year, what kind of led you to getting to the coaching ranks, wanting to do that?
Um, Certainly playing for those guys, but also at the time, one of the things that a lot of college players did was you would go work. Summer camps were huge on college campuses, especially like I mean, every school had them, and every school had overnight camps and day camps, and you didn't have the AAU circuit, and that's what kids did. They went to those camps, and so I would go around the state along with a lot of college players, and you would work camp. You would play basketball at night with the college guys that were working. So you got a chance to get paid a little bit. You got a chance to work on your game. You got a chance to play against good players. And over the course of my 4 years, I did that a lot, and just really started to enjoy the teaching part of it. And now you get a chance to coach younger kids and try to teach them the game of basketball. And so that was part of that decision was enjoying that aspect of it. But really the biggest thing for me was how Coach Johnson and certainly Coach Pope as well just impacted my life and inspired me. And they were coaches that they cared. They cared about me. They cared about their players. We didn't, we spent as much time off the floor talking about things that weren't basketball and how we could improve in different areas of our lives, and that really impacted me. And I just thought, if I can be somebody that can do that for younger people at some point, I'd love to be able to see myself doing that. So that's kind of how I ended up thinking about it.
Well, you did I think 3 years at Emory and Henry, and then you go to Navy and Wofford, and you get to assist under some great coaches. I think Don DeVoe has won over 500 wins, and then Mike Young there at Wofford, who's now I think at Tech. So talk about that experience and what you were able to learn on them.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate in the timing of a lot of things. I went to the Naval Academy and joined a staff that, as you mentioned, Coach DeVoe had won over 500 games. He'd won a ton. He's one of the greatest coaches ever at Tennessee. Probably until Rick Barnes, honestly, he was probably the most successful coach, at Tennessee over an extended period of time. And they didn't realize that. They thought they should be winning national championships. But Coach DeVoe was awesome, and I joined a staff with Doug Wojcik, who is an assistant at Michigan State. He'd been a head coach a number of places. Emmett Davis, who ended up being the head coach at Colgate, and Navy was really good. And so my first year, I go from Division III to never really knowing anything about Division I or experiencing it. I go to the Naval Academy and we go to the NCAA tournament, and I'm like, this is awesome, man. This is easy. This coaching thing is fun, and we actually went my first 2 years. We went to the NCAA tournament, so you get spoiled pretty early in your career, but I learned a ton during that time, and probably the biggest thing was having the experience to start to learn how to recruit nationally and building some relationships all over the country. That really impacted me and I think helped my career a ton. Was starting to build those relationships and be around guys that could really recruit, and knowing the importance and learning the importance of that. And then I was there for 6 years, and obviously had a relationship with Coach Young, and he was being promoted from the assistant to the head coach down there. So it was his first year as a head coach. I went down there and worked for him, and that experience was really cool for me because I got to see somebody starting their head coaching career and what that looked like, and how uncomfortable it is sometimes, especially when you're in the same program and you go from being an assistant to now being the head coach. But I learned a ton, and Mike was great, and I was there for his first 2 years.
Coach, did Coach Wojcik's son play at Carolina last year?
He did, yeah, the
Yeah, okay.
oldest of his
I
sons.
thought
Yeah.
I thought he did. Hey, listen, I might be skipping ahead a little bit further along than Gregory and Devin want to, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump in this. Listen, I'm an old Averett grad. That was Averett College back in those days. I'm sure you remember that before
Yep.
they added the university on there. But we had some good days when I was in school. That was the late '80s. Went to the Sweet 16 one year with Kennard. I can't remember what his last name is. Played with the Houston Rockets, and then all of a sudden it was just some lean years come through. And I remember an 0-25 year, and then all of a sudden I heard about this guy named Jimmy Allen. He's coming to save Averett. So I was like, you got to get in the gym to see this guy. But the thing I wanted to start off with was I know that you are a fantastic coach, but let me tell you something. Back in those days, and that was just the early 2000s, there was a song, kind of come out by a group called ZZ Top, Sharp Dressed Man. I'm just going to tell my boys right now, this guy could not only coach, he could dress with the best of them when he was coaching. So I just wanted to let them know that. But um, just speak about, I mean, and I guess my question, I'll finally get to it here. Are you a glutton for punishment? Do you like to go to that rebuilding stage, I guess, go through the rebuilding stage and put something together in your own, I guess, blueprint?
Um, Great question. First of all, I don't wear the suits anymore, which is the best thing ever. I wore those out. I can tell you, but I appreciate that. That's the best thing that came out of COVID, in my opinion, was coaches finally getting smart and wearing something more comfortable on the sideline. But no, at that time for me, Dean Richard Fowle was the president at Averett, and he had been here at Emory and Henry as the dean of I think he was the dean of faculty when I was a student, and so I had that relationship. But I'd been coaching for 9 years. Excuse me, I've been coaching for 11 years at that point. And I was in my early 30s and kind of started thinking about. I was enjoying Division I a lot, but it was also a question of, how much longer would I have to be an assistant before I ever got a shot at being a head coach, and realistically, there's no telling if you would ever get that shot at the Division I level, and so Averett was an option, and it was really the first job that I kind of felt like I could get, and the I went and visited, and I mean, the facility there was incredible. I mean, it's still one of the better facilities of all the places that I've coached or coached in. At the I would say that even up to the mid-major level at a lot of places. So, you see that. I really liked the town of Danville. I loved that feeling. And the proximity to a lot of other places. And as you mentioned, they hadn't won any games, so I kind of figured, like I can't be worse as a coach. Like we could we could be as bad, but there was only really one way to go, and there was some really cool kids that were part of that first group when I got there, and we were able to win 13 games that first year, and then we were able to recruit a bunch of kids that came in and really helped us turn the corner. But in terms of like making that decision, it was really about trying to be realistic in terms of like what it's really hard to get a job, and there's only 300 and some Division I jobs and about 200 and some Division II jobs. I mean, there's not even 1,000 head coaching positions at the Division I, Division II, or Division III level in men's basketball. And so, figuring that and being realistic that, hey, I probably need to take this job if I can get it. And it was just an awesome experience. That time in Danville, that time at Averett, playing in the league that we did, and Christopher Newport was in that league. There were some really good teams. And then competing against a lot of the teams in the ODAC that I had played against, and coached against as a player. That was a cool experience for me.
Well, Coach, I just have to break it to you. I was brokenhearted in 2010 when it was time to go. But my next question is, was it all about getting back on that D1 level? Was that the dream, I guess, to get back to it?
Yeah, at the time, I wasn't necessarily, I have to go back to Division I. I really wasn't really thinking about it. Um, I had been there for 6 years. We had won. We had gone to the second round of the tournament. We'd gone to the tournament 3 times. There were a couple of factors. One, we were competing with, Randolph Macon was kind of top 5 in the country, and that was Mike Rhodes at the time. Hamden Sydney was good. Roanoke was good. Christopher Newport obviously was good, and the question was just recruiting against some of those schools and the challenges that we had at Averett. And then the other thing that that I kind of the two things that I thought about was, if I'm gonna make a move, I probably need to make that man. And it ended up having the opportunity to go to West Point, where I grew up and where my dad was a grad, which meant a lot to me. And I had been on the staff at Navy, and we'd had success, and so I felt like I wanted to be a part of doing something that hadn't been done, and being a part of building a program that had not had success, but I thought had the the opportunity. And I mean, you have guys like Bobby Knight and Coach K that that were the head coaches there, and Coach Spiker, who I went there to work for. We had a lot of common friends, and so I felt like I would be able to make an impact. And I also really like the thing that I do like about the Division I level, is being on a staff. And at smaller colleges, a lot of times it's you as the head coach, and typically, especially at the Division III level, a lot of times it's guys right out of college, or it's grad assistants, and it might be one assistant and a volunteer who works another job, and so you don't spend the day with those people. You don't spend as much time like you do on a Division I staff, where you're all doing the same thing, and you're doing it with people that are a little bit older and super experienced, and just that camaraderie. And when you're working 14 and 15, 16 hours a day, you don't want it to be by yourself, and so that was something that I enjoyed about the Division I level, was getting back to being on a staff.
Did you have to tippy toe around the around West Point there with the naval background at all?
No, well, fortunately for me, my dad had grown up there, and and I had, well, excuse me, I had grown up there. My dad had worked, gone to school there and worked there. So that was it was pretty comfortable for me.
Coach, I got to ask, going back to your coaching beginnings, was it a difficult decision at all choosing between a field in or a profession in accounting versus going into coaching?
No, actually, the funny thing was I spoke to a coaching class about a week ago, and it's wild how I was just so naive, and I don't know what I would have done if Coach Johnson hadn't hired me. Robert Lindenberg, who's the AD at Radford, was our assistant coach, and Robert wasn't. He was trying to get a grad assistant position at Virginia Tech, but wasn't sure if he was going to get that. Wasn't sure if that's what he wanted to do. I had no other plan. Like I didn't I wasn't going to be an accountant. I didn't I was an okay student, but that wasn't ultimately that didn't end up being my passion. But I also didn't know I didn't have another path. I didn't know what exactly I would do. And had coach not hired, had Robert not left, I don't know where I'd be in terms of coaching. So I was again, I've been really, and I know I've been very, very lucky. So, but no, it wasn't a difficult decision.
Well, going back to your time in Army, one thing that I've always been interested in, especially with these military academies, is the recruiting
Yeah.
aspects. I mean, how do you go about just finding kids who are interested in, I mean, not only do they have to be good at basketball, but interested in going down that path? I mean, is it coming from these military academy prep schools or how do you go about finding these kids?
Yeah, interestingly, it really wasn't the kids that had been in some of the military prep schools. The military piece there is a lot different than the military piece at an academy. And so sometimes those kids just really weren't. I mean, they didn't go there for that reason. They went there because it was an opportunity to go play for an extra year a lot of times, and for us, it was a challenge, but I think it really helped me learn. Like you really had to evaluate guys, and you had to be better at it than other people, and you had to be able to project guys in terms of their ability to improve um, and you recruited a ton more guys. So, you'd go sit with people at events and they're watching one or two kids and you're watching every kid and you're evaluating every kid. And so I felt like that had helped me at, Navy and then going back to West Point, being able to do that. Finding kids that were under the radar, finding kids that could see the value of what a place like West Point could do for you. And then who wanted to play Division One basketball, but also were mature enough to say, "Hey, I'm going to graduate from this place, and I'm going to have some pretty cool opportunities." And so it became more a question of educating, evaluating really well, and then finding guys that were, you felt like in a year or two could be really good players at the Division One level, but other people weren't gonna necessarily give a scholarship to.
Coach, I have to break it to you. I have to be honest on most of these broadcasts and stuff. I lost sight of you after Army. So all of a sudden, Gregory sends an email out and says, "Hey, I just landed Jimmy Allen." I was like, "That is awesome. Where is he at now?" And he says he's at Emory and Henry. I said, "There's no way." And the reason why I bring this up is I am on 81 corridor at least once or twice a month out to Bristol,
Mhm.
Abington, Kingsport, Johnson City. So I'm like, God, if I would have only paid attention for just a half a second, could have stopped in and saw you coach some ball games. But
Yeah.
the other thing I was going to get, what I'm getting to is how is it being able to come home? I mean, do you consider this home now or what?
It's definitely a place I spent a long time. I was here for 7 years. There's a lot of people here that were here or people that that I know in the area that are still in the area. I loved my time at Emory and Henry, and a huge part of that was Coach Johnson's family, and how I just became a part of their family. They welcomed all of us. But when you're coaching with him, you're around them all the time. And so, Miss Johnson's still here, lives here at Emory. And so, uh, it's cool to come back to a place and for a little while it was a little bit surreal because I hadn't been able to come back for a while and ultimately had that opportunity to do that and do it at a time where Emory's making that transition from Division 3 to Division 2 and for me it was a time that I thought it was an opportunity and the timing was right for me to do that. My son's also was a senior last year and was going to go play at Plymouth State because I was at the University of New Hampshire last year and ultimately made this decision with the idea that he was going to come down here and redshirt this year and then have 4 years to play. So that was another part of the decision was him and I coming down here and really for him deciding if this is something that he wanted to do. I certainly wasn't gonna tell him that you need to go to Emory and Henry. It was hey, if you come with me, check it out, see what you think. He hadn't been here since he was 5. Might not like it, but ultimately he was excited about the opportunity and the opportunity to get an extra year probably in terms of redshirting and then play at the Division 2 level. That was a part of that decision as well.
Coach, is this the first year that Emory and Henry has gone D2, or was it last year?
So they played a full schedule last year, but I don't think they were eligible for the tournament. We were eligible now. We're officially Division 2. We can win the league and all set as part of the SAC conference, which is an amazing conference.
See, we fight over questions, and Gregory said he had a doozy for us. So when he pulled that Bill Pope question, I knew what he had done. He'd done some studying. But what was your just kind of in retro for the year? What was kind of your outlook for this past year without going in, basically going into all the nuts and bolts?
Yeah, when I ultimately decided to take the job, it was later in May, and the guys that had been in the program, they'd been home for a month and a half, and so there really wasn't any opportunity to do a lot with the roster in terms of recruiting or anything like that. And they had not been very successful, so I mean I knew it was going to be a challenge, with the group that we had, and kind of just trying to change some of the ideas and culture. Everybody uses the word culture in the program. To me, it's the environment that you have and creating an environment that's going to lead you to success on the court. And so, trying to really get that environment to a different place and a different level. It's a challenge, and it doesn't matter where you go that first year. You're bringing in thoughts and ideas and ways that you want to do things, and you're always going to have some pushback on some of that stuff. And so that first year is always a challenge. I really thought, even though our record wasn't great, we won twice as many league games as they'd won the first year in the league. But that was still only 4. So, but we were in every game. There was really only a couple games that we didn't have a chance. I think we lost 6 one-possession games at one point. And this is probably one of the two best, top to bottom, one of the two best Division 2 leagues in the country. And that was something I knew the league was really good. I didn't realize that it was that good, in terms of all 13 teams. We got 4 teams in the NCAA tournament and had 2 other teams during the year that were actually nationally ranked, so who didn't make the tournament. So, that piece has been uh, a challenge, and that's not a lot of fun initially, but it's something that you got to work through, and you got to find a way to get past all that stuff. And I'm excited right now in terms of the ability to recruit some guys that I think can help us be a little bit more competitive in the league.
Well, these two boys of mine, they know I'm the stat nerd, guru, whatever you want to say. So I didn't want to give too much away to Gregory because he would have stole my question today. But I did look at the schedule, and I totally agree with what you just said 100%. I mean, I couldn't find but 2 ball games that really you didn't have a shot in. I mean, it
Yeah.
just seemed to me that you were right there, just a couple 3 points away from being in a ball game. So what I did was I took it a step further, and usually I can come up with a conclusion of what type of ball team this is or something. But I'm sitting there looking at all your stats. I can't find it. This is the first time I've been stumped all year. I mean, you don't turn the ball over, but 2 or 3 times more than the opponent. Um, you're only being out rebounded maybe by 2 or 3, if that, per opponent. Um, Less than one assist, to the opponent, and I'm just like, where is this? I know you like to shoot the three ball. I do know that. So where is the difference in you and your opponents this year? I can't find it.
Yeah, I appreciate you digging into the stats. We might hire you as our analytics guy, next year. And well, we can't pay you, but we can give you free tickets to the game. But
I'll take
yeah,
them, coach. I will take them.
yeah, and that's kind of what I was speaking to a little bit is we were really right there, and we had. I mean, we probably played for 6 weeks during league play where we had 8 guys dressed, and two of those guys had been walk-ons, and so really the difference I thought was we didn't have great depth, and so we really weren't able to sustain the level of play as well over the course of a game, and we didn't have good size, and so it's really hard to play, to be a good defensive team when you're undersized at almost every spot. And so that was a piece that I thought that was really the difference for us. I mean, we scored it. We were in the top 50 in the country in effective field goal percentage. We were in the top 20 for most of the year. So we were really scoring the basketball. We couldn't find a way to stop anybody consistently, and that was kind of the difference. But we were right there, and we were close, and hopefully that's something that our returners can see the how close or how small the margin is in terms of winning and losing.
I'll let these guys have a couple questions in a minute. I know I'm taking over right now, but hey, I'm dad anyway, so it doesn't matter, right? But listen, looking at your career, and I'll let them, like I said, feed off some of this maybe. You've been D1, you've been to D3, and now you've made that kind of full circle back to D2 now. Can you tell me, and I guess I'll lay it out there as far as players and maybe coaching. What's the difference, or is there a difference on each level?
Um, you know, size certainly is the biggest difference in a lot of cases. But coaching wise, I would say, not really. It's definitely not there's better coaches at D1 than there are at D3. I mean, I've seen high school coaches who are better than a lot of Division 1 head coaches that people consider as some of the best, out there. There's really good coaches at every level. So the coaching piece, absolutely not. Think sometimes the time as a coach that you can spend on your craft at different levels, and then having the resources in terms of staff, that matters. I mean, that makes a big difference. When you have 3 and 4, and I mean now the Division 1 level and the higher levels, I mean they have entire staffs of coaches and recruiting coordinators and player development guys and now general managers, and having those kind of resources certainly helps, being able to recruit. But no, there is a fine line between each of those levels, and I would say you're better. You're better Division 2. I mean, there's probably 40 or 50 Division 2 teams that would be able to compete in most Division 1, your lower level Division 1 conferences. And then the same thing with Division 3. There's a lot of Division 3 teams that would be able to compete, with a lot of in a lot of Division 2 conferences. So, there's definitely not a huge difference, as you go from different division to division.
Coach, I was looking at the roster and the kind of the stats like Big Greg was. I see you have a solid kind of core there with your underclassmen with 2 freshmen and a sophomore, Dixon, Pilson, and Crawford. How are they going to be factoring into next year's team? Or are they going to be like the core, and how do you build around that?
Yeah, well, Jackson's a Botetourt guy. He had a great year for us and was a really good player. He's going to be a big part of what we do. And then Corbin Dixon was a kid. He was one of the two kids we were able to get after I got the job, and ended up being a really big piece for us. So th those guys, Assad Matasaya is another guy that'll be back. And so we have about five guys that played. It doesn't look like Draven Pilson's going to be back, but we'll see kind of how that all plays out. The difference, honestly, is um, because you can go and get older players, you have to. And
Hmm.
so what you don't want is your core to be freshmen and sophomores because the teams that are going to win the league are going to be juniors and seniors. And so I think you've got to have a good mix of guys in each of your classes, and you need to be able to go out and I mean, the reality is I don't think you're not building a program over the course of 4 years like you were even 5 years ago before the transfer portal stuff and where kids could transfer multiple times and not have to sit out. I mean, you're really building a team year by year. And so the question is going to be, can you find those guys that fit what you're trying to do that year? Hoping that some of those guys are going to stay after that and be able to provide some sense of continuity. But the reality is you're building this year's team, and then you better be able to teach and coach at a little bit faster pace than you were before, because you're not going to have you're going to have a lot steeper learning curve.
Coach, we know what NIL and the transfer portal's doing to Division One. How far down do those two things filter into D2?
Well, they definitely filter down and they affect us. But there's a number of schools at this level that have some resources where they can provide some NIL money to students, have some budget, opportunities that can provide some different experiences for kids. And so you're certainly competing against that even at this level. It's just not as much as it is at the Division I level.
Will NIL and the transfer portal destroy Division One basketball?
Um, I don't know that it's going to destroy it. The question is, and I think the frustrating part for most everybody is just not knowing, where it's headed, and there's no governing body right now. I mean, it was the NCAA just somehow lost any ability to manage or govern anything. So, people say it's like the Wild Wild West. It just went from like the NCAA had all of these rules, and you felt like you were, following all these rules, and then all of a sudden it was like somebody was like, you know what, we're not going to do that anymore, and then it was just gone. And so now we're all just trying to figure out how to survive and trying to stay ahead of the curve here and how things are changing.
Yeah, and I don't know how everybody keeps up with everything because, like you just said, it just seems like the rules, I don't know. I don't even know if they fit the whatever you want to call it crime. I think back to a University of Miami tight end that played 9 years in the NCAA, NCAA football. I'm like,
Yeah.
how in the world? Carolina has a guy playing wide receiver that had to sit out for 4 games because, NC Central cuts the program out during COVID, and then he has to transfer out to play football. Then his mom gets sick and he wants to come home. Then you have a kid that kind of played in your area out there. I hate to mention names, but I'll just go ahead and say it. Tyler Nickel grows up out there in your area. He plays at Carolina for a year. He transfers to Virginia Tech for a year. Now he's in year 3 at Vanderbilt, and I wouldn't doubt we don't see him in another uniform next year. It just does not seem right. I just don't think the playing field is fair.
Well, yeah, it's wild. The fact that I mean, if you look at the teams that were in the Sweet 16 and you look down at their starting five and where their starting five went to school, is pretty incredible. So, like I said, you just gotta find a way to keep up with what's happening and try to do your best to build a team and to provide an environment that is going to lead to a good experience for however long that those young men are in your program, and you hope even if it is for a year, it's something that is a positive, it makes a positive impact on them.
Coach, and this is from me single-handedly, I guess you want to say, how much does, and I'm hoping you might be able to add to this. How much does the NBA's guidelines as far as the one and done? I mean, if they had 3-year players now, or you can't enter the league until after your junior year or 3 years out of high school, would that change anything now?
I don't think it would change anything now that the NIL stuff is. I actually think the NIL stuff might keep some kids in school for a little longer, just because it's so. I mean, it's so competitive in the NBA, and there's so few spots. And now, if you're making a decent amount of money at the college level, you can do that for a little bit longer because you're getting paid, and you might not make a roster.
Well, Coach, I wanted to just mention the whole topic here. I'm a huge Florida Gator fan, so we have I think four of our starters are all transfers. So we have
Yeah.
one guy, Condon, who was a kid from Australia that came in as a freshman. But along those lines, I was looking at your roster and I see one kid that kind of stands out to me. I'm out here in Jacksonville, Florida, so Sam Ritchie's upon a future kid.
Yep.
I don't know if he's coming back next year or not, but if you can talk about a little about him, I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
he had a good year for us. He was a guy that we definitely that we did get on in the summer. He was looking at a lot of Division III schools. Ultimately, there was actually a tie to his high school coach had played at the Naval Academy after I had played, and so we had some mutual people. That was how I found out about him, and he did a good job for us. He played on a really good high school team that had a lot of success. He's a little bit undersized, but he's really, really tough. Can shoot the basketball, loves to compete, and was able to come here, instead of potentially playing at the Division III level, and competed at the D2 level, and just kind of see what that experience has been like.
Well, Coach, last one for me. What's the blueprint going forward? Is it just recruiting, hitting the portal, and kind of getting some more experience in the team?
Definitely, we've got to get some. We didn't have much size, so we've got to improve our team size overall and team depth and just the level of experience for sure. Yeah, I think it's finding the right mix and finding the right people, and that's the other thing is you're not recruiting kids as long, which I don't mind that piece, but you're also not necessarily getting to know them as well throughout the recruiting process. And so you just better be careful to do your research and do your homework in terms of their what kind of character these you're bringing into the program.
Actually, I shouldn't say the last one for me. This is the last one for me. If right now we're getting to the Elite Eight, or we have some more, Sweet 16 games.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite right now in the NCAA tournament? If you had to pick one,
Well,
and why is it the Gators?
I like watching Florida play. I really like watching Alabama play. I love the way they play and the pace that they play. I I've always, I think Duke has always been a team that I've been impressed with. Um, just how they make the game really simple, which I think is a good thing. I think sometimes we, as coaches, tend to overcomplicate things because we want to look like we're doing more than maybe we actually are. And I mean, I had watched Cooper Flag a decent amount. But last night, he was really special, and you just don't see that very often. It's a shame. I would have loved to have seen Duke and Alabama actually in a Final Four game, but there's so many really really good teams when Houston and Auburn and I mean obviously Duke, Alabama, Tennessee. they're really good. So I would say that, Florida's been on a, run where they're scoring it at a high level. Alabama's scoring it at a high level. Duke's scoring it at a high level. And then Houston is just somebody that might be able to stop one of those teams.
Coach, I asked this question across the ODAC when we talked to all the coaches over there. We've only talked to two coaches in the SAC, so I'll just narrow it down to you two. Who wins the one-on-one mythical national championship between you and Mellinger?
I've never seen him play, but he's younger than I am, so if it was in our prime, I don't know. That'd be a good question. I did play. This is actually a kind of a cool thing. When I was at Northside, they had a they had a Knights of Columbus one-on-one tournament in Roanoke, and each team got to send two players, and it was really cool because it was all the teams in the Roanoke area, and they did it at Roanoke Catholic, and so. I went to actually they might have only sent one, but you basically had a one-on-one playoff with the other kids on your team, and then I was able to go and play, and the final four of the tournament was me, Curtis Blair, who played at Richmond and was a great player. He's now an NBA official, and uh, Chris Mascaro, who was a good player at North Cross, and then George Lynch. And so, it was me against George Lynch in the semifinals of this one-on-one tournament. So I was okay at playing one-on-one.
Coach, I got a couple questions to kind of go along with that. So first, I got to ask, best player that you ever played against or coached against your whole career here.
Yeah, you know, I mean, obviously those guys that were on that Patrick Henry team were really really good. I got to play against some really good players when so my first 2 years of high school I was in New York and got to play against some good players. Got to see some really good players. The state tournament at that time, we were I didn't play. I was a freshman, but was Christian Leitner was playing in the state tournament, Kenny Anderson was playing in the state tournament, and King Rice were all in the New York State tournament. So watching those guys live when I was a freshman in high school was really cool. I've coached against a lot of really good players. I wish you would have asked me this before I came on here because I could have gone back and thought of some. But my second year at Navy, we played Utah in the first round of the NCAA tournament, and that was Keith Van Horn. Uh, the I'm trying to think because the next year was the year that they went to the championship game. It was Keith Van Horn, the big kid. God, I can't think of his name right now. And then the other guard, they were all NBA players, all on the same team. Those guys were really good. But the next year when we went to the NCAA tournament, we played the North Carolina team that was number one in the country, and in the first round. And so that was Antoine Jameson, Vince Carter, Okalaja, Shammond Williams, and Ed Cota. And I mean, Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter were pretty good basketball players. So I've gotten to coach against some pretty good ones.
Absolutely. And then to go along with that, best arena or best facility that you've had the opportunity to travel to and coach in.
Yeah, the University of Arizona is really cool. My very first game as head coach at West Point was at Oregon, and that was the team that went to the. Did they go to the national championship game or they went to the Final Four? I know that Oregon team, but that arena is really really cool to coach in. Certainly Cameron. I've gotten a chance to coach in Cameron twice as a head coach against Coach K. That's a pretty cool experience. So those are some cool places. We played UConn last year when I was at University of New Hampshire. and on campus, and that's they're coming off a national championship and the favorites to win it again, and we're getting to go in there and play. So I've been lucky to have some cool experiences.
Well, any other questions? I think we're good. Well, Coach, we held you over a little bit longer than we said we were going
It's
to. So
okay. That was a lot of fun. I appreciate you guys doing it.
we appreciate your time. I know you have a lot to do, a lot of recruiting fights to get back to. So, Coach Jimmy Allen of the Emory and Henry Wasps, Coach, we thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank
Coach.
you, Coach.